You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages of the newspapers as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood and chief leader writer at The Observer, Sonia Sodha. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, as the first meetings take place to find peace in Ukraine, The Eye says the UK is on a collision course with Russia over whether British troops should take part in any peacekeeping force. The Times says RAF Typhoon jets could be used instead of troops on the ground. That story also leads the Financial Times with the new relationship between America and Russia described as the path to a rapid ending of the war. But, says the Telegraph, one price of a peace deal could be the ousting of Ukraine's President Zelensky if he's forced to hold new elections. The Guardian, meanwhile, says that once a deal is sealed, Russia and the US will work together to explore what it calls economic opportunities. Elsewhere, Thames Water being allowed to borrow £3 billion to help it stave off financial collapse is lead for the Metro, which also says that 3 other water companies are asking to increase customer bills even more than already permitted. The Mail says there's anger in Tory ranks after the Lady Chief Justice rebuked both main party leaders for criticising a judge who allowed a Gazan family into Britain using a scheme designed for Ukrainians. The Mirror carries an exclusive interview with the mother of Southport murder victim Alice Da Silva Aguiar. While The Sun carries claims by one town mayor in Mallorca that Meghan Markle has stolen part of the town logo for her lifestyle brand. We're joined tonight by Theo Usherwood and Sonia Sodha to take us through the papers. Welcome to you both. Let's start with The Guardian and our top story for the last couple of days, negotiations between the US and Russia. But The Guardian going further and suggesting that the US is seeking economic opportunities once the war is solved. Theo?
I think this is significant. It will obviously means lifting sanctions on Russia. It's going to allow Vladimir Putin and Moscow to immediately try and get the Russian economy back on track. Those sanctions have taken their toll, but if Russia is now, if the US is now ready to lift those sanctions and seek closer partnership, allow, of course, US companies to operate in Russia, then the immediate effect is that Russia is going to be able to boost its economy, and that had the sanctions, and obviously the sanctions have taken their toll against the Russian people, they're going to be feeling some respite. And you know, in terms of the wider negotiations, I mean, it's significant, and it would point to the fact that this deal at the moment, and it's looking like there's going to be a deal, is all going Russia's way.
And certainly Russia's in from the cold.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's huge concern about these talks from Ukraine and from Europe on a number of different grounds. First is, you know, you look at the pictures coming out of these talks and it's very obvious who's missing. Ukraine, who should be one of the parties to any talks about peace in Ukraine, but also, you know, Europe has been kind of shut out of these talks, which, you know, the US is saying is a sort of initial temperature take with Russia to see what their red lines might be. So that's, you know, that's a huge concern. But also the fact that Trump essentially sort of appeared to concede to a lot of Putin's demands before even sitting down at the table with Russia today. But there was some briefing going into these talks from the US that there would be a backstop from the US, which is that, you know, if Russia doesn't play along, then there may be the threat of the US flooding the international market with energy, with oil, which would have further detrimental economic consequences for the US. Now, that is not the noise coming out of the talks that we've seen this afternoon. It all seems to be very cosy. And I think it's hugely concerning because at the same time, we've, you know, as we've seen in the last sort of 48 hours, we've had European leaders getting together. We've had Keir Starmer give out some very strong signals about what Britain's role might be, what Europe's role might need to be in terms of keeping a ceasefire, keeping the peace if there were to be some sort of deal struck between Russia and Ukraine. But Europe, believes that that a role for Europe has to be contingent on an American backstop, and that America needs to provide some security guarantees. And that is not something that is explicitly forthcoming after these talks this afternoon. So I agree with Theo. It feels like this is very much being done on Russia's terms, which is such an extraordinary about turn compared to where we were, under the last administration. It's a huge, huge shift in US foreign policy that has massive consequences for the whole world.
And we've heard from Zelensky saying that, no deal will be acceptable if it's done behind Ukraine's back, although there has been some pushback on that from Marco Rubio, who said that an end to the Ukraine conflict must be acceptable to all involved, including Ukraine, Europe and Russia, adding that its European allies were consulted on Ukraine.
Yes, but not necessarily acceptable to President Zelensky. I mean, the front page of the Telegraph is saying that the Ukrainian president could fall as a price of peace. And, of course, your US correspondent just before 10 was talking about the Trump press conference at Mar-a-Lago, where he turned around and he said that, pointed to the fact that Zelensky's approval ratings were down at 4%, and they may well want to have elections in Ukraine. This feels very much like it's running away from Europe, these negotiations. Keir Starmer wants to go to the United States next week to persuade Donald Trump to put in some sort of guarantee. Meanwhile, Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has said that Russia won't accept any foreign forces, whether peacekeeping or otherwise, under any flag, whether it be NATO or the European Union, operating in Ukraine as a peacekeeping force. And then when Trump was asked about it again at the same Mar-a-Lago press conference, when he suggested that Zelensky could fall in any elections and you would presume to a Russian puppet candidate, Trump, refused to provide that unequivocal backing, saying that it'd be a matter for Europe if they wanted to operate a peacekeeping force. And all the while, we're told that Keir Starmer is going to fly to to Washington next week and persuade Donald Trump to provide that essential guarantee. By then, it could be well too late.
The Daily Telegraph going a bit further on that line about having elections in Ukraine, saying that a two-part deal has been struck. First of all, ceasefire, and then elections. The final stage would involve Kiev and Moscow signing a final agreement to end the conflict after an election.
Yeah, and obviously the massive concern is that you have an election, there's Russian interference, a pro-Putin candidate gets installed as Ukrainian president, which makes, and suddenly you've got somebody who might accede to Russia's demands. I mean, it's really, really concerning. And I think to lots of viewers who will be looking at this thinking, you had Russia illegally invade Ukraine, seize territory. What message does it send to Putin that, after 3 years on, he's now got an administration in the US which seems to be sending noises, which is actually, this is behaviour that we want to reward internationally and globally. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary, and it leaves Ukraine and Europe in an incredibly difficult position because, as many European leaders are saying, we rely on an American security backstop. If that all of a sudden isn't there, which is some of the noises that's coming from some people, around Trump, which is basically, sorry guys, this is Europe. You guys have got to take control, take care of it now. This isn't for us, America, to sort of be there anymore. That is just such a shift in the tectonic plates around global stability. I think I honestly think world leaders are still getting their heads around it.
And it's not just Europe, by the way. It's much smaller than that, isn't it? Because if you think back to the summit that Macron convened on Monday, it was France, Germany, the UK, outside of the European Union, Italy, Spain, but no Hungary, no Slovenia, no Slovakia. All of those countries, of course, pushed out because Macron felt that they weren't necessarily going to be conducive to constructive talks about how to stand up to Russia.
But I believe there is going to be another meeting,
and they are going to, and they're
Paris
possibly
tomorrow.
going to, and they're probably going to attend. But Europe is not necessarily as united as Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron and Olaf Scholz would like to wish it to be.
Well, certainly that there was a split because Scholz himself was saying that he found it annoying and inappropriate to even talk about European ground troops on the front line. So the split is already there.
Yeah, absolutely. And how this is going to sort of, I mean, if it is the case that the US thinks it's now completely up to Europe, the practical questions are just confounding, really. And I think, actually, if we come onto the front page of the Times, that story is you've got people in the UK saying, well, maybe there are other ways of doing this. Maybe we don't actually need to put troops on the ground, because you're talking about an incredibly long border that you would need European troops to patrol, and a very significant number of troops, not just from the UK, but from other parts of Europe. You're already starting to look at the numbers that might be realistic from European countries. They don't add up to what you might need. So here we've got a government source suggesting, well, maybe there's another alternative. Maybe we could do it through air policing, through 30 Typhoon jets rather than tens of thousands of British soldiers. But I'm no security expert, but I think this does sound rather tenuous. But I think the fact that we've got some of this briefing on the front pages of our newspapers, these are really difficult questions that have to be worked out. And I genuinely don't think anyone's got the answers. It's a new world we're working in.
No, absolutely. But certainly the suggestion of dozens of Typhoons to patrol the skies, which would mean a smaller number of troops on the ground, is a potential solution.
It is, but again, Keir Starmer and his team in Number 10 have been absolutely adamant that in order for British forces to be deployed, he needs to have the backing of the United States, because heaven forbid one of those jets is shot down by Russian anti-aircraft. Is the United States going to back up the United Kingdom? Is Donald Trump going to back up Keir Starmer? We could find ourselves, and we know how, and it is well documented, how adept the Russian forces are at running hybrid warfare, especially in the Baltic states. We could well find, and at the same time, we've got Parliament. If you look at the parties from the Liberal Democrats, Labour, obviously, you would think that they would, if it came to a vote in Parliament, support British forces being deployed to Ukraine and along the Europe's eastern border. But there is a real danger that British forces could find themselves drawn into a sort of hybrid grey warfare with Russia, and without being able to turn around to Trump and the administration in Washington and say, well, where's the backup? And even if Trump provides the backup, there are those, and I was listening to the former CIA director John Brennan on. He was speaking this morning, saying that you can't actually trust Donald Trump. You go ahead and trust Donald Trump, but beware what happens, because he's going to do what's in America's interest. So even if he provides that guarantee, do we really want to put British forces' lives at risk on the backing of on the basis that Donald Trump's going to provide the backing if and when necessary?
And he's unpredictable, and he changes his mind as well.
But thus far, he said, he's adamant that there will be no American troops on the ground. Sir Keir Starmer travelling to Washington next week. What do you think the chances are that he can persuade Donald Trump that there does have to be this US backstop?
Well, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, there's certainly a chance, and Donald Trump is known for sort of, what if he sees somebody, he may shift his stance somewhat. But I think the deeper problem is, as Theo outlined it, which is that, even if he does shift, how do we know he's not going to go back to where he was on Russia after he's had a phone call or talks with President Putin? And that's the thing. It's like he's unpredictable, and he doesn't play international diplomacy on the same terms as his predecessors, or on the same terms of engagement as many other world leaders do. So, do you trust him? Is a very big question.
The Eye, as well as being at odds with the US, the Eye suggesting that the UK's on collision course with Russia also. So Sir Keir Starmer treading a very thin line.
Yes, he is, but this is nothing. Since we had that sort of realignment with that phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin last week, we today's announcement, I don't think, the talks today shouldn't perhaps come as a surprise to anybody. That it was clear from the phone call last week that we've seen a complete realignment in the United States and Europe. That's no longer what we've known since 1945 as being the alliance formed in NATO, the basis of NATO. The alliance is now Europe and Zelensky's Ukraine on the one hand, and then Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov in the other corner, and that's what people have kind of got to get to grips with, and it's a really it's really scary.
Yeah, huge shift. Theo and Sonia, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, the Conservative anger after a judge criticised the politicising of a court's decision to let a Palestinian family come to the UK. Do stay with us.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre. Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent. A show of military might and menace. Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day. It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov. The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past. There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world? Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West. Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News? Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people.
Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood and chief leader writer at The Observer, Sonia Sodha. Let's take a look at the Mail front page. And this story about a row involving a judge's ruling in an immigration case that allowed a Palestinian family to gain asylum in the UK. This is a criticism from Kemi Badenoch and also Keir Starmer. Sonia.
So this is Britain's most senior lawyer, the Lady Chief Justice, Baroness Carr. So what she's referring to is an exchange between Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch in the House of Commons that was about a family of Palestinian refugees who were granted, they were asylum seekers, they were granted refugee status by the British courts. They applied under a Ukrainian scheme. They weren't granted refuge under that, but the courts awarded it to them under the European Convention of Human Rights and the rights to a family life because they had a very close family member, an uncle, the children did, over here in the UK. And what the Lady Chief Justice is saying, so both Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer in their own ways criticise the decision of the courts and criticise this ruling by the judge. And what she's pushing back very strongly, saying, is that the judiciary are independent. Their job is to apply the law. The law is under, British law, under the European Convention of Human Rights, which is part of our Human Rights Act. The law is that this family did have the right to come to the UK. So it's fine for you to say, we don't like the law, we're going to change it, but to criticise judges for making these decisions is toxic. So that's where this row has come from.
Yeah, she's accusing them of failing to respect and protect judges.
Keir Starmer's got a bit of a taste of his own medicine. I mean, this is a man, a Prime Minister, who loves to give a legal answer to a political question. In the House of Commons last week, he gave a political answer to a political question when he said that the law was wrong. But the law can never be wrong. The law is the law. It's either right, it is what it is. And in fairness to Baroness Carr, she's not criticising, she's not criticising the fact that Keir Starmer wants to close the loophole. There is obviously a loophole, and the Prime Minister has said that he wants to close it, and the Home Office are going to do that. What she's criticising is Keir Starmer for saying that the law's wrong, because it can't be wrong, it's the law. So I think what's interesting is that, Keir Starmer...
Is that right? Can the law not be wrong?
Well, no, I mean, it's...
Because laws are changed, aren't they?
Yes, but in the instance in which the judge applied it in the High Court by granting this family asylum under the European Convention of Human Rights, he applied the law in the correct way and granted this family refuge to stay in the United Kingdom. He didn't do anything wrong, and that's what the Lady Chief Justice is saying. Keir Starmer said that the decision was wrong. It wasn't wrong. The judge applied the law. If you don't like it, change it, and that's what Keir Starmer has said that he will do. I think there's a slight hint of irony that Keir Starmer, who's a man who likes to give a legal defence as to why he's made a certain decision at any particular time, is now getting it served back to him in spades by this Lady Chief Justice.
Is that called Schadenfreude?
Yeah, a little bit.
Thea and Sonia, thank you very much for taking us through the papers. We'll see you in the 11. Let's take a look at the weather for you now. Well, after the recent cold and mostly dry conditions, the rest of the week looks much milder and more unsettled. Most places will have a dry start tomorrow with a patchy frost about Ireland and southwestern Britain. Look milder with some rain. That rain will spread eastwards during the morning, turning increasingly light and patchy. But northern Scotland and central and eastern England should stay dry. Expect sunny spells there. More rain will reach Western Ireland by lunchtime. It'll be milder than recently, but rather windy, with gales near northeastern and western coasts. More of the west will turn wet again through the afternoon, while Scotland and northern England will see a little rain and hill snow. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, the US and Russia sit down for crunch talks on Ukraine, as Donald Trump says Ukraine could have settled the war years ago.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.